Good afternoon to all of our viewers on the West Coast, and good evening to our viewers on the East Coast and all around the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this very special event brought to you by the Los Angeles Public Library International Languages Department and the Italian Cultural Institute in Los Angeles. Here at the Los Angeles Public Library International Languages Department, we provide language learning in Armenian, Italian, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and hopefully soon French. We're working on that. So please visit lapl.org/events for more information about these and other programs. And again, thank you very much for being with us today, because we're so pleased to be collaborating with the Italian Cultural Institute. And I have the pleasure of introducing you to the director of the IIC LA, Valeria Rumori. She was appointed director of the IIC LA in 2015, and her overseas assignments have included being the interim director and director of the Italian Cultural Institutes in San Francisco and Marseille. And we will be speaking about Marseille soon, because that is a big component of the book we're going to be talking about today. And prior to joining the Foreign Office in 1993, she worked for the Italian Ministry of Education, University, and Research. I'm so happy to be introducing to you Valeria Rumori.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you all for joining us today. I would like to welcome you to this webinar with acclaimed prize-winning writer Gianrico Carofiglio presenting his most recent book, 3 o'clock in the morning. This book, among all his works, is particularly dear to me, as Wendy was saying, as it is based in Marseille, where I had the pleasure of hosting Gianrico's tour a few years ago. And perhaps that's where he got his inspiration too. This event has been graciously organized by the Los Angeles Public Library and the Italian Cultural Institute in Los Angeles on the occasion of the 21st Week of Italian Language in the World, an initiative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. I would like to sincerely thank the Los Angeles Public Library, Anna Campos, Acting Principal Librarian, Central Library Programming and Outreach Acting Manager, and the moderator, of course, Wendy Horowitz, Archivist Photo Collection. Gianrico's US virtual tour will bring him to the Arizona State University and to the University of Houston, and then he will continue to Washington, D.C. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity of meeting and collaborating with Gianrico while I was working at the Institute in Marseille, France. Marseille is, in fact, the third character in his story, a city that Gianrico has captured in all its authenticity and its internal borders, dynamic spirit, and at times even a little bit unsettling, like the feeling of being either misplaced or observed by invisible eyes. Thanks again to the Los Angeles Public Library for hosting this first event of the Week of the Italian Language, and of course, our author, Gianrico Carofiglio, who enthusiastically accepted my invite at the very beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, when we did not know yet about our global uncertainties, and we were both hoping to having a tour in person. We are really fortunate and thrilled to have him online today with us, and thus offer him also the opportunity to reach even a larger and wider audience in the Southwest. I personally invite you to follow the Italian Cultural Institute in Los Angeles on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, for daily posts on Italian culture and Italy, and for details on our coming events. Please also visit our YouTube channel for past events. Again, thank you for attending. Enjoy the presentation. Grazie. To you, Wendy.
E prego, grazie a voi. And thank you again, Valeria. Well, I'm very excited to be introducing one of Italy's most beloved contemporary writers. He has worked for many years as a prosecutor, specializing in organized crime, and was appointed advisor of the Anti-Mafia Committee in the Italian Parliament in 2007. He served as a senator from 2008 until 2013, and he has also written several novels featuring the character of the defense lawyer Guido Guerrieri. In this instance, we are taking a bit of a departure, actually a big departure from that theme, and we are going to be, I guess this is more, well, we'll talk more with about what Mr. Carofiglio has intended, but it definitely is a very different kind of novel, and it feels like a little bit more from the heart and soul of a father and his son. And by the way, the author's last name is Carofiglio, dear son. So I couldn't help but notice that. I'm very, very happy to introduce you to the author, Gianrico Carofiglio.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Good evening for those who are watching from Italy or Europe. Thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you, Valeria. I'm very happy to be here, if I can say so. I would have liked most to be with you physically, but I'm sure that this will happen soon. And yes, you're right, Wendy. We are talking about a book that is sort of different novel from many other novels that I've written that are called legal thriller or noir or crime. They are not definitions that I really like very much because from my point of view, also these novels are psychological tales. The crime frame is just a tool for me to talk about the human soul and things like this. But for this novel, there is no risk of this kind of label misunderstanding because this is technically, if I can say so, a coming-of-age novel, special from my point of view, sorry, a kind of coming-of-age novel. And it's a story about the father and the son that didn't know each other and that for an incredible, difficult to repeat circumstances come to meet, really, to understand who they are and to understand that in our lives, often we really don't know anything about the people that we love most, our parents, our friends, our spouses. And from this point of view, it's a novel of revelations, a novel of discovery. And it's a novel about the talent and the tragedy of talent. I think we can talk about this later. But to say just something about the story. Antonio, it's a boy that all of a sudden discovers of being sick. He's got epilepsy, and at the beginning it's very difficult to treat this disease, and the drugs are worse than the disease, and his parents are very worried. And then they decide to try with a very important specialist in Marseilles, France. That is, by the way, the only real character in the novel. I mean, the character of the novel is directly inspired to a real professor that was very famous in the world of neurology in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so they go to this great professor, and he gives them hope. the disease can be treated, and they do what they have to do. And after 3 years, they come back to ascertain if everything is okay. And father and son, because the mother, they are separated, divorced, father and son without the mother. And Antonio, the boy, thinks that the divorce was his father's fault. And somehow he is, I wouldn't say that he hates him, but something like this. They go together, and at the beginning of this trip, they barely speak to each other. And when they go to the doctor, he says, everything seems okay, but we have to check. And so you don't take the pills from now, and you have to stay awake for 2 nights. If nothing happens, it's okay, it's done. And so they really didn't know this. And so they have to stay together 2 days and 2 nights awake in this unknown, mysterious, unsettling, fascinating city. And so they have to stay together, to speak, and many things happen in these 2 days and 2 nights. Just one more thing. This is my only novel that is directly inspired to a true story. Because if you are a writer, it often happens you are at a party, at a dinner, somebody comes and tells you, you are a writer, I have a story for you. And it can be a nightmare, I swear, it can be a nightmare. And you try to hide somewhere, but you never find a good place to hide. Maybe 10 years ago at the party, this guy came to me with exactly that kind of face, I have a story for you, you have to write it, blah, blah, blah. And I was scared. And then he told me his story about his disease, his father, and his 2 days in Marseilles. And I was shocked. And I told him, can I write this story, please? You have to, I'm here for this. And when he read the book, a few years later, texted me, congratulations, the main character, Dot.
One of the things that I picked up on right away was so many great works of literature involve the journey. Whether we're talking about, Homer, or whether we're talking about, a Dickens novel where it's just like Oliver Twist, journey, the journey of getting from here to there. But this is a different kind of journey. This is almost a philosophical journey. In fact, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the way that you view your philosophy of life, because after reading the book, I felt that this really was a very, very a journey of the mind, because we're being asked, the reader is being asked to look within. There are so many philosophical suggestions and references. The one that really struck me was the quote that you used, where Antonio's father is quoting the philosopher, don't live your life this way. Don't drag your life with you like it's a burden, like it's a responsibility to constantly be drawing attention to what you've done, and it becomes like a weight on you to drag your life with you. And I thought that was very profound. In fact, Antonio asks him to repeat it because it's so profound. So one of my questions I wanted to ask you is, are you very philosophical and introspective by nature? Do you ask yourself these kinds of questions in your life about the meaning of what we do and what the big picture is, and, you know, a guidance for, in a way, the book has a lot of guidance for us all.
Well, it has always been a serious problem for me, this. I mean, asking too many questions. My father wasn't happy about this. But yes, it happened when I was a kid, and it still happens. And this is probably the reason why I write novels. I write books. I don't write only novels, mostly novels, also other things, essays and other things. And the question is the basis of fiction. There is something that you don't know, and you want to discover, you want to understand something, and you write a novel, you create fictional characters to answer to your question. There is something that you don't know and you want to understand this. If you are a writer, a fiction writer, and there is something that you know very well, that you understand very well, you'd better not write a novel about this, because it's going to be a weak novel. The strength of a novel comes from this journey of discovery. And you were asking me at the beginning of your question, what is your philosophy? Exactly that. My so-called philosophy is the journey. And every work of fiction is a journey. If you watch closely, every work of fiction is a journey, metaphorical, physical, in a very small place, in a huge place, in the universe, always a journey. The best metaphor to describe the structure of the novel as we know it is the journey. And in this novel, we have a physical journey across the city for 2 days and 2 nights, and the philosophical, poetical, emotional journey in the relationship between father and son, and other characters that are not there, but they are there, like the mother that we never see, but is very, very much present in the story.
Well, now you brought me to my next point regarding mother, Antonio's mother, and the journey. There is, this really stood out for me as well. When Antonio's father is telling him about how he met Antonio's mother for the first time, it's a very interesting writing that you do, some interesting choices that you make in the way that you tell that story. It starts off with Antonio and his father broaching the subject of, you know, how did you meet? They're sitting across from each other at a cafe, but then it jumps into the past. And now you are writing a passage where Antonio is maybe 20 years old. And the passage is written in that time, in that moment. And it's written in the third person. And we find out about, you know, the students who are, bullying in a way, the younger freshmen, and that fateful meeting. And then at the end of that passage, we jump right back into the dialogue between Antonio and his father. It felt very cinematic to me. It felt almost like I was watching a movie that suddenly goes into a flashback and then comes back into the present tense, but still talking about that moment, about that time, that incident. Is that something that you deliberately wanted to do and give that reader that view?
Yes, it is a tool that I like very much, to pass from one form, one style, and another one third person, first person. In other novel, I've been using very much the second person. That is incredibly fascinating, even if it is incredibly difficult to use. And what I wanted to do, it is exactly what you have said. I couldn't say it better, also in Italian. And I really like the idea of, I'm not thinking to a movie when I write, but I really like the idea of moving the point of view to help the reader to see different angles of the story and of the characters. I think that writing and reading, are cooperative actions. There is no such thing like creation by the writer as just fruition by the reader. Reading, it's a creative act, and you, the writer, must offer to the reader as many opportunity as possible to use his creative attitude, to use her creative power to create his or her personal story and personal characters that can be similar to the reader's character, but they can also be very different. This is the beauty and the tragedy of writing fiction. When you finish a book, when you finish to talk about your characters, they don't belong to you anymore. They belong to the reader, they belong to the world. This is, I repeat, it's wonderful, it's incredibly poetic, but it is also tragic. It's like same thing that you can prove with your children. They don't belong to you, they belong to the big world. There is a beautiful line of Kyle Gibran, I don't remember it in English, but it says something that like this, your sons, your children are like arrows to the world. They will be in place that you can't even dream of. And exactly the same thing happens to novels and to fictional characters. Just don't trust writers who want to tell you what it means, what they have written, what means their novel, what their characters are, because they don't understand this tragic, wonderful truth. Novels and characters don't belong to writers.
You and I did have the opportunity to touch on this recently when we tested this platform. It really did, what you just said just now happened to me. I'm sure it's going to happen to everyone who reads this book, where the reader is at a point in the novel where you are suggesting a philosophical idea and it directly relates to the reader. I had that personally with me in that part where Antonio's father refers to sometimes we deliberately leave something behind in a place that we don't want to leave. We maybe subconsciously, maybe deliberately, will leave something behind in the hopes that we'll return. Things like that, these little jewels that you've scattered around this novel is what makes this such a special experience, because it gives the reader a moment to, I actually stopped reading and thought about that, and thought about the times in my life when I either did that or somebody did it to me. And I find there are so many instances where we can just put the book down and think about what you are suggesting and how it relates to our individual experience. So yes, I definitely felt that. So mission accomplished when it comes to what you're it definitely works. And I think that's a great reward for a writer too, when you when you hope to achieve something and you absolutely achieve it. So I'm going to pose another question off this topic. Okay. Jazz and math. All right. So when Antonio's father sits in on the jam session, he's a little nervous because he's already explained to Antonio a little bit about the philosophy of jazz and what it is and what it isn't. And I think you even quoted, oh my goodness, I forget the musician, but if you think
Armstrong.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Was it?
Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong of the philosophy of jazz, and yet mathematics to so many of us is so far removed from the idea of jazz. In fact, that reminds me, you said something that I didn't quite understand, which another quote that you made, which is people who think that mathematics is complicated don't really understand, the mathematics. Do you remember that quote?
Yes, of course.
I didn't quite follow it because I always felt that math was very, 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 very complicated, but jazz is very, 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 effortless. But there is a dichotomy there. There's a contradiction. Is that right? With math and jazz?
Well, you have to know that this quote comes from one of the greatest mathematician genius of history. And so it was quite easy for him to say that math is easier than life. But I think that really math can be a tool to reduce the anxiety that the huge complexity of life gives to everybody. And the quote is, those who think that math is complicated really don't know how complicated is life. And this is true. This is true. It's a smart thing to say. It's clever, and it does the job of a good quote. Forces us, me, you, everybody, to think. What does it mean? Is it true? It is not. There is not a right answer to this question. But I thought it was a perfect quote for the father's character, that was a very good mathematician, but not a genius. And so this is about the tragedy of talent that is not genius. It's about the limits of talent. It's about math that he says exactly this. I used math to fight against the horrible anxiety, the vacuum of life. And I thought this was a good quote to talk about this personal drama.
The epilepsy.
Not only the epilepsy, the father's drama, the drama of a man that is 50 years old, so is young, but he knows that his best period is finished. This happens to all mathematicians that have their best period when they are young. It's very, very difficult to find a mathematician that discovered something important after his 30s or 40s maximum. And so he says, we should be able to die young without dying. That means to do something else. When we understand that we are to the borders of our talent, but nobody is really able to do this. And so I really love this quote because it helped to enlighten many angles of this personal drama, of their personal dramas. Because, okay, we are not telling all the story, but the relationship between the so-called rational part, math, and the artistic part side, the jazz, it's mostly about the fact that the rational part is very creative, very emotional sometimes, can look
so
strange,
it's kind of like the yin and yang of life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
They fit together. You've got the right brain, the left brain, and
exactly. Exactly.
Another question I have is Antonio is telling us the story. It happened in 1983. He's telling it even though we travel back in time in a few different areas or a few different periods where we're back with Antonio's father as a young man, and we're back with Antonio as a teenager going through this incredible experience. But we're also hearing him reflect as an adult. We're also hearing him speak in the first person as an adult looking back on that time. What can we assume about Antonio in the present day? Like now?
He's a professor, like his father. And when he was 17, 18, everybody thought that he had no talent. And then we discovered that he was hiding his talent because he didn't want to show it, because he didn't want to look like his father, because he thought that it was his father's fault, the divorce and the end of his family. And so there is a chapter that I love when the father, that is a very, very good mathematician, discovers that his son, the apparently untalented son, has exactly his same talent, probably more. And it was one of the chapters that I have enjoyed most writing, not only of this book, ever, because it was one of those moments of discovery that is what I really like most when I read a novel or watch a movie. And I was feeling or hoping what the reader will have experienced reading that. And and at the end of the novel, we discover Antonio doesn't tell us exactly, but we can understand that after everything, his path was blazed by those 2 days and 2 nights in Marseille, when he incredibly met his father and discovered so many things about his life, his father's life, and this personal life, and this future, and the love and the talent, and what really life can be, how difficult and beautiful and dramatic and fascinating and full of opportunity can be. There is a word from the language of Polynesia that we find at the end of the book. The word is balikwas, and it's a wonderful word. It doesn't exist in any other language, because in a single word we find an incredible, wonderful concept, because balikwas means being all of a sudden in another place and seeing things that we thought to know in a completely different way. Just one word to say this. If I had to say what this novel is about, well, I would say this novel is about balikwas.
And I don't want to give away the ending for anyone, but I will say that it's a very satisfying ending when we realize how precious those 2 days turned out to be for Antonio, looking back, that wonderful opportunity, because we, it is in a way saying, carpe diem, seize the day, do it now, because you may not have time, you may not have another chance. So yeah, it's a quiet, poetic, beautiful, sweet, and very enriching experience reading the book. And you did share something that I did not know, which is the way the book was inspired to you by someone who happened to approach you at a party. It's a great idea. So now I'm kind of wondering, thinking back on the book and all the characters that we meet in Marseilles, were any of those characters elaborated somewhat from your own personal experience? How much of it is autobiographical, and how much of it came where it was inspired directly from that party guest, or did it just blossom in your mind from that seed?
As I was saying before, there is one character that is directly
that is true
from the,
yeah,
exactly. And then a good writer, I hope I am a good writer, but of course it's not up to me to say that, always writes autobiographical characters. You probably, for sure, you know the famous, many times quoted sentence by Flaubert, who said, Madame Bovary, it's me. If you are writing honestly, speaking truth, you can't be not autobiographically, difficult word. Okay, you understand. You have to be that. That doesn't mean to talk about real events. You can do that, of course. But we're talking about autobiography of feelings. You have to go in the basement of your soul, and you have to look for things, characters, experience that worry you, that unsettle you, that shame you, and it's all about you. There is no good fiction in things that don't unsettle us. The good fiction and the good characters can be found in the basement, in places where we usually don't want to stay, where we feel uncomfortable. This is autobiography, and but I don't want to escape. There are some characters in the novel, minor characters that come from real world, as usually happens, but generally speaking, they are fictional. They, what did you say? They blossomed from my mind, whatever it means for me.
Thank you so much. That was beautifully said, and I have chills just talking to you about all of these feelings. I mean, here you are, a writer of hard-boiled criminal fiction, and there is so much tenderness, so much emotion, so much sensitivity in this novel, and it's just that in itself is a wonderful discovery in terms of the way that we embrace you as an author. And I think this is a perfect time for us to ask our viewers if they would like to chime in, because I know I'm interested in hearing what people have to say. I've been speaking a lot about this book. Now let's hear from the people out there. And I'm going to read a question from Jessica. Salve. As others have said, Marseille is a great third character in your novel. How did you choose Marseille for this narrative? Did you already know the city well?
Okay, yes, I knew the city. As Valeria was saying before, I was there for more than 2 weeks for a program, writer in residence, and the city is really, really interesting, incredibly interesting, unsettling, creepy sometimes, shiny. It's a really, really an interesting place. It's a perfect place for a novel in general, for this novel. But the true story that guy told me was in Marseille, because that professor, the only real person that you find in the novel, was from Marseille. That was the most important place where in those years you could treat epilepsy, and especially juvenile epilepsy. And so there were those things together. It was Marseille. I knew Marseille. I wanted to write something about this city. This story that came to me like a gift, exactly like a gift, was in Marseille. And the city is a third character, and the city is also a metaphor. Night and day, light and darkness, happiness and drama, a creepy city and a place of sun and light and sea and beauty. And so I couldn't have found a better place to set a novel like this.
Let's see, we have a question for you in Italian. And so I'm very happy that we're having some Italian, and I was hoping that we would. Valeria, would you like to read the question for Carofiglio?
Yes, of course, I'll be delighted to. So Gianrico, il suo romanzo mi ha commosso molto, vorrei ringraziarla di cuore e mi ha dato una certa speranza per diventare più vicina alla mia famiglia. So in English is something like, your novel has really moved me a lot, and I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this. And your story, your novel, gave me a certain hope in order to become closer to my own family. So it's been very inspirational to you.
Thank you.
Gianrico.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is something that I've been told many times about this novel. And this really moves me so much. I didn't expect this, but strange, moving things have been happening in several presentations that I have done about this book. I remember, for example, once it was a very, very crowded presentation, and I had just finished the copy signing, and there was this young woman that came to me and said, I want to say thank you very much for this novel. And I said, just smiling, as you do usually in these occasions, thank you, it's very kind of you. Just let me explain, she said. And there was something incredibly serious in her eyes. And I said, please, I remember the situation. We were one in front of the other and so many people all around. And all of a sudden, it was silent because she said, you know, I've got epilepsy. And my mother, I still have. And my mother always helped me, but she really didn't understand which was the problem. And then I read the book and I gave the book to her. And she read the book and now she knows. And I want to say thank you very much for this. And it was really, really difficult to, you understand what I mean.
Christine Brancolini wants you to know that this is one of my favorite books ever. I'm going back to reread it now. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Christine, for that wonderful review. And Valeria, I'm going to pass it over to you for the Italian.
Gianrico, Gina Atkinson is asking you, vorrebbe condividere le sue idee per altri romanzi nel futuro? Would you like to share with me some of your ideas for future novels, if you have any?
You have to know that writers are thieves. They don't share their ideas of the future because they are paranoid about their ideas, but I'm just kidding. I can tell you something about the novel I'm writing right now. That it's a novel with a female character. It is written from her point of view. And so it's this woman who talks. It's the second one with the same female character. Her name is Penelope. And this story is, it is 3 novels in one. So it's a good opportunity to buy it because you buy 1 novel and you have 3, and there are 3 stories that are entangled, and there is a crime story, but there is also what interests me more, as I was saying before. It's this story about a personal life that is a devastated personal life, and that with a really unexpected meeting changes in an unexpected way. And so I really like very much to put together the suspense of a classical crime story, a detective story, with the psychological research of the so-called psychological novel. Then we have a third part of this that I'm not going to tell you because I want you to buy it next year when it will be in bookshelves.
Before we go to the next question, that I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this is the Italian version, which I just want to make sure I don't forget to say that the Los Angeles Public Library has both the Italian version and, of course, the English version for you to borrow. But, of course, Amazon has it for sale, and we hope that you will order it. Okay.
And also, if I may add something, Wendy, thank you for pointing that out. I'd like to add that also we are always happy to collaborate with the only, let's say, Italian bookshop here in the West Coast, which happens to be in San Francisco, is Libreria Pino, that carries all Italian authors, all the, coolest Italian literary prizes, and also carries Strega and Campiello, and of course, his book is already was available a while ago at Libreria Pino as well, not just Amazon. I like to stay a bit more like for the week of Italian language in the Italian circle. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's the week of Italian language, everyone.
Yeah.
So we hope that you'll also tune in to, okay, another plug. Every Monday from 11 a.m. Los Angeles time, we have an online Italian conversation group. It's not a class, it's just a group where we all speak Italian together. And people from all over the world, literally from all over the world, click on that link and join us here in Los Angeles for Italian conversation. And it's my favorite hour of the week, I will say. All right, next question, because I want to make sure to get as many of these to you as possible. William would like to know, has there been interest in making this book into a film?
Yes, sir. But unfortunately, I'm not allowed to say more, even if we are very, very close to news. And it is a very, very interesting project, an international project involving USA. And maybe we can decide to, we can make an appointment to talk about, finger crossed, the movie and this project and other things. But yes, the answer is yes. It probably will be an international movie.
Well, that's great news. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure we all are. Okay, Valeria, do the honors.
Yes. Jaeger di Savoia asks, non ho ancora letto il tuo libro, ma in che modo il tuo lavoro precedente come pubblico ministero ha influenzato questo libro attuale? I haven't read your book yet, but how your previous job, as you know, it was a magistrate, it was an attorney, and how did influence this very book somehow?
I wouldn't say that my previous job influenced directly this book. In fact, there's nothing of the judiciary, there's nothing about like a legal thriller or an investigation or something like this. But on the other hand, I would say that every book of mine has been influenced by my previous job, that it has been a huge opportunity. If you work as a lawyer, a prosecutor, a cop, and you have eyes for the world around you, you have a huge number of opportunities. You find a huge amount of stories and characters, that you don't necessarily take them and put them like they are in your stories, but they are like fuel for your narrative engine. And so I will say that everything I write has been somehow influenced by my previous job. Not directly, of course. When I write a judiciary novel, a courtroom drama novel, the influence is direct, and that kind of novel, we must be clear about this, can be written only by a professional. It is impossible to write that kind of novel from a person that has not been a professional, that doesn't know the technicalities, where you can find the most interesting psychological dilemmas, but you must know how it works. This is the reason why often when I read a detective story, a crime or a legal thriller, I stop reading after very few pages. Because when you buy a book, when you begin to read a book, you have a deal with the writer. The writer should guarantee that when you are in the book, you are in a fictional world that has its own rules. And if you decide to write a realistic novel, you must comply with the rules of the real world. But if you talk about without knowing the rules of the trial, I stop believing in the story. Is the so-called suspension of disbelief. I can accord the suspension of disbelief if the rules are respected. If they are not, I can't. And so was just talking about something else. But if you want to write a legal thriller, you'd better be a lawyer or a prosecutor or a judge, or you'd better choose something else.
Thank you. Fascinating. We have another comment from Angela. She says,
this is
I
commercial.
got mine. Oh, do you know Angela?
No. I say this is a commercial. Thank you, Angela.
Oh, Libreria Pino. And if you get it from Liberino Pino, you get it in 2 days. Thank you, Angela, for letting us know that. Anything else? Any other comments about the book? Oh, here we go. Christine says, and it's Christine Broncolini again, the book jackets are so different between the Italian and the US editions. Yes, you know something? I apologize. I don't have the US with me, but here we are. Hang on. Can we see it? Here's the American version right here, and the Italian. Is there a reason for this, Gianrico?
I don't think so, but I find very interesting when you put the two covers closed, you can see something that we were talking about before. The two sides of the city, the two sides of this character, the third character, the darkness and the light.
Yes.
The shiny city and the creepy city. And so it is interesting. I like both the covers for different reasons.
Yeah, and the American version, it is you see the beautiful water and the rocks, yes, and the sun, and it is like a beautiful travel postcard.
Yes, and then Gianrico describes it so well. It's like the two sides of Marseille, and we lived there and worked there, and that's where we met actually the first time, and that's where he got the inspiration. He really got this big character that is Marseille in the book, the dark side and the beautiful, bright, the calanques, like when they go, to the beach, beautiful. The calanques in the pristine water, and it's wonderful. And then this feeling of having eyes all over you, but you don't see them. I mean, it's like you feel like you're a foreigner kind of lost there, and they know you are. So Gianrico had just a residency there, but he got perfectly the spirit, and that's what the covers are about, really.
If I could just jump in, we only have a minute, but I want to remark on what you said, Valeria. There is a part in the book where Antonio and his father accept an invitation from some people that they just meet. And you're not sure if this is a good idea or a bad idea. And I'm not going to give it away, but yes, that comes up often, where are we safe, or, can we just, oftentimes it's Antonio's father who says, let's just go where we're not going to have an itinerary. We're not going to have a map. We're just going to walk and see what happens. And wonderful things happen, but yeah, you're not always sure if you should follow down this road or not. So
that's the thrill. That's one of the thrills in living in Marseille, and that's one of the thrills of the book. It leaves you with this kind of excitement that, is it a good idea or a bad idea? Maybe both.
Yeah. Right? Last question, and that is from, if you don't mind, Valeria.
Chiara Giacobbe asks, preferisce scrivere romanzi di tipo legale o quelli più personali e psicologici? So for the rest of the audience do you prefer writing novels more like, detective stories or, legal stories, or more, let's say, psychological, more like personal somehow?
I have the privilege of being allowed to write both categories, and so it depends. if I should say one or the other one, I would say psychological novels. But as we were saying before, my so-called legal thriller or crime or noir are psychological novels, and the genre frame is just a tool to drive the reader to what I really want to say. That is something about the human soul, whatever it means. But if I should say one or the other one, I would say psychological.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to wrap up. So I just want to briefly thank everyone out there who's watching. So glad that we were able to do this with the IIC LA. Just would like to just do a quick thank you to Valeria. You know, the IIC LA, I just have to say this, all throughout lockdown, all throughout the pandemic, when we didn't know if we were ever going to get out of the house. We didn't even want to buy groceries. But they provided online entertainment that was unparalleled, unbelievable opportunities to engage in discovering literature, classic cinema, countless Italian film festivals. I made a point of, you know, reserving an entire Saturday, and I watched 4 of those in a row. Whenever you have them, it was so generous of the IIC LA to provide online programming. So thank you to the IIC LA, and of course, Gianrico Carofiglio. What an honor to be able to participate in this event with you. Thank you for sharing your book and all of your stories about the book with us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and it was really an enriching hour with you. Hope we can repeat it in person as soon as possible. I hope
so too. And Valeria, any last words for?
Thank you again to you all. I'd like to add, this is the very first event of the Week of the Italian Language. So if someone has missed the live webinar today, can always follow the other ones, because Gianrico's tour is the institute is gonna promote it in Houston and also in other places. So please stay tuned on our Facebook, Instagram, and also on our website for more Gianrico's presentations and other events for the Week of Italian Language, the 21st Week of Italian Language in the world, in Los Angeles and all over the Southwest. And by the way, this event is co-presented with my colleague also in San Francisco. So it's broadcasted all over the West Coast of the United States. So thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much, Anna, and the Los Angeles Public Library. Grazie ancora, Gianrico. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Ciao.
Arrivederci.